Sitting here at McGrath Beach at one of the old whale sites, it looks like they may be running natural gas through here. There are a couple of gauges that register 500 psi. So we're in the vicinity of where in December 1993 there was an oil leak and a pipe rupture that led to an oil spill at McGrath Lake that was one of the biggest spills in Ventura County history, and led to the lake being polluted and 7 miles of coastline. You're taking a look at photographs that were in the Ventura County section of the LA Times on January 24th, 1997, and it's referring to a record settlement of $3.2 million that was involved in the Berry Petroleum oil spill at McGrath Lake. 84,000 gallons of oil were spilled, and 1.3 million of that sum was to be used for restoration of the project site. The actual spill occurred back in December of 1993, and there was a ruptured pipeline. No one was paying any attention to it. So for several days, oil spilled into McGrath Lake and eventually into the coastal waters nearby. More than 160 birds were killed. The spill damaged nearly 7 miles of beach, dunes, and wildlife habitat surrounding the lake, which was close to Gonzales Road and Harbor Boulevard. We're right here at the edge of McGrath Lake, and you're looking at a bundle of pipes, old pipes, that run through this coastal wetlands area. They all look like they've been here a long, long time, and they're right here next to the water. Well, these pipes are strewn around, and there's a pipe here that's just a small piece that's laying here. It looks like another part of the pipe is laying in the water over there. So there's all kinds of trash here. The place is really mucked up. There's all kinds of items that are littering the McGrath Lake that seem to be associated with the oil drilling operations. You see all kinds of junk littering an area that should be a nice coastal wetland. But this area is really trashed by all the residue of previous oil operations. So I'm standing on something right now that looks like a pipe of, maybe 18-inch diameter. Has a number of fittings and other pieces of pipe right here, but this is just one small area. And all around here there are the residue of previous oil well operations. Not what you'd expect in a coastal wetland. Well, there's a sheen on the water down here, so obviously there's a leak where petroleum is coming into this coastal waterway, and there could be endangered fish and birds in this area. There really shouldn't be oil on the top of this waterway, but you can expect a small amount of seepage with any operation. That green algae is really beautiful, but it suffocates what could be normally living in a waterway like this. So it really has a negative effect on coastal waterways. When you have algae like this, it depletes the oxygen and you end up getting dead zones where nothing grows and nothing lives. Well, I used to jog on this stretch of beach all the way from the Santa Clara River mouth up to the Mandalay power plant. So I used to go by McGrath Lake all the time, and back in those days it was really a beautiful feature. The water was clear, lots of different kinds of wildlife. You'd see California least terns foraging there and nesting close by, lots of different kinds of ducks. And this whole area has been compromised. It was supposed to have been restored as part of the settlement agreement with Berry Petroleum. But even though there was $3.2 million in funds attributed to restoration, we can see that there's a lot of problems in this area. You can see the green algae, you can see arundo and myoporum, lots of invasive species, and really a lack of the kind of wildlife that you would normally see in a really unique wetlands like this. There's a lot of the poisonous, lethal hydrogen sulfide in these wells. The grade is so thick it's really mostly used for tarring roads, so you're not going to get much gasoline made out of this stuff. We don't know how much oil they're extracting from this area. There's some recently new wells, but it's probably not enough to keep a motorhome running. It's what they call tar grade. You'd use it for retarring a road. We can see that there's an algae bloom on the water here. There's a real absence of the kind of wildlife you'd expect to see in an area like this. We're not seeing many insects, so no one knows how much oil would be leaking on an annual basis from these kind of operations, but we can see that there's some. This place is really disrupted. Most of the plants that you see are invasive species. There's ice plant at my feet. There's gigantic arundo donax behind me. There's a lot of myoporum. So this whole area really would be a great spot for a restoration plan to get out all these non-native species so that the native species that are supposed to be here would have a chance to come back. We still don't have a good mechanism for keeping track of these old wells. In fact, Ventura County officials have stated that there are hundreds of miles of pipeline that they don't have records for. They don't know who the owners are. They don't have any mechanism to track that information down. So occasionally you see where someone's digging a trench line or whatever, and they run into one of these old pipelines, and there will be an oil spill, sometimes gas, sometimes both. We don't know what agency is checking this now. In the past, there was a state division of oil and gas that used to be responsible for supposedly monitoring these things and making sure they were all up to snuff. But apparently they weren't doing much of a job, because in the case of Berry Petroleum, they had a ruptured pipe that leaked for about a week before anyone found it. So by the time they found it, there were thousands of gallons of oil that already had leaked into this really unique waterway. McGrath Lake is really the only freshwater lake that we know of that's behind coastal dunes in Ventura County. So it's habitat for a number of endangered species and a lot of unique plants around the lake. But the lake got polluted, and oil then ran from the lake down into coastal waters and contaminated 7 miles of shoreline in 1993. For the Surf and River Report, I'm Alan Sanders here at what's left of McGrath Lake.
Environmental impacts on our coastal communities have never been greater. From pollution to climate change, coastal communities are at ground zero. The Surf and River Report brings you the latest developments impacting our coastal communities. We'll talk with experts about how environmental pollution, development, and climate change is affecting our coastal and river ecosystems. It's all right here on the Surf and River Report.